Hello there, this is Math 0018 Practice Test 4. So let me get my pen here. Alright, number 1. Name the place value of the digit 5. So if you look at letter A, the 5 is back here. We need to start at the decimal point and count back to the right. So you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. So that's the place value of that digit, of the 5. On part B, the 5 is in the third place back to the right of the decimal. So count again, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So that's the place value there. And make sure you have that THS on the end. And then on letter C, the 5 is directly to the right of the decimal point. So that first place to the right is always the tenths place. Right, number 2, name the place value of the digit 6. So 6 is back here at the end. Start at the decimal and count to the right. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths. It's a very long word. 100,000ths. Okay, number 3. Round the number to the given place value. So we want to round this to the hundredths. So the 0 is in the hundredths place. So you're looking at the 9. Since the 9 is 5 or bigger, we're going to add 1. So you add 1 and 0 is 1. I'll make that a little bit bigger. You bring down the 6, the 3, and the 7. So I'm just going to write it so it looks nicer over here. 73.61 is your answer. Number 4, we want to place the correct symbol less than or greater than between the two numbers. So remember, this is where if you don't have the same number of digits behind the decimal point, you add zeros until they do, and then you compare the numbers as if they were whole numbers. So A, we have 0.873 and 0.803. They have the same number of digits. So ignore the decimals. 873 would be greater than 803. Okay? On part B, we have 0.088 and 0.52. So I need to add a 0 here. So you're looking at 88 versus 520. The 88 is definitely less than. Part C, 0.25 and 0.5. Add a 0 there to the 5. So 25 is less than 50. And on D, we have 0.6 and 0.12. Add a 0 to the 6, so they both have two digits now behind the decimal. And 60 and 12, 60 is greater than 12. Number 5, add or subtract. So if you don't have your calculator with you, stop the video and go get it, because you're going to need it for the rest of this practice test. So look at what we have here. We have negative 8.44, not 8.4, plus 7.77 minus 14.6. So there's a lot of different ways you could do it. I'm going to go ahead and change my subtraction sign over here at the end and keep the 7.77, that's the keep part, change it to addition, and take the opposite, so it's going to become a negative 14.6. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my two negatives together, because when the signs are the same, you add and keep the sign. So when I add those, I get 23, and it's a negative 23 plus 7.77. So now if you have a negative and a positive, the rule is to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, the 23 is larger, so it's going to be a negative, and when you subtract, you get negative 15.23. So basically, when you're doing these problems, I'm not putting any signs into my calculator. I am just letting the calculator do adding or subtracting, multiplying or dividing with positive numbers, and I figure out the sign on my own. That's the best way to do it. Number 6. You had a balance of $349.98 in your checking account. You then made a deposit of $189.54 and wrote a check for $64.89. Find the new balance in your checking account. All right, so we started out with $349. If you make a deposit, that's addition, right? You're adding it into your account. So we're going to do 349.98 plus 189.54. Okay, so when we do that, let's see, 0.98 plus 189.54. Okay, and that comes out to be 539.52. Now, then it says, then you wrote a check for $64.89. Well, whenever you write a check, that's taking money out of your account. So you take the 539.52 and subtract 64.89. And when we do that, 64, you get 474.63, and that is the amount in your checking account. All right. Number 7 says subtract. Now you've got all kinds of subtraction and negative signs here, so I'm going to do keep, change, opposite. So negative 42.1 stays the same, that's the keep. Change it to addition, and the opposite of 8.8 is negative 8.8. Now the signs are the same, so I add and keep the sign, so I know it's going to be a negative. And 42.1 plus 8.8 gives me 50, a negative 50.9. Number 8, 101.03 minus a negative 8.6. Again, keep, change, opposite. So keep the 1.03, add, change it to addition, and the opposite of a negative would be a positive. So now you just have two positive numbers. 1.03 plus 8.6, you just add and you get 9.63. Number 9. In a recent year, 1.155 billion tons of coal were produced in a country. In the same year, the country's consumption of coal was 1.113 billion tons. How many more million tons, actually that should probably say billion, how many more billion tons of coal were produced than were consumed that year? So let me change that M to a B there. Sorry about that. Okay, so they produced more than they consumed, which is, I guess, a good thing. So what you're subtracting here is 1.155 subtract or minus 1.113. So you don't even need to do keep, change, opposite. You can just subtract. It's no big deal. 1.113, and that comes out to 0.042, and it would actually be billion, not million. Okay? So that's the answer there. That's a decimal point there. Number 10, we want to multiply. So we have a negative times a negative, so the sign is going to be positive, and then just use your calculator. 8.1 times 7.4 comes out to be 59.94, and it's positive. Number 11, a positive times a negative is going to give us a negative. So we have 1.58 times 0.003. And so we're going to end up with, where is the decimal point? Okay, 0.00474. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the problem and 5 in the answer. 5 decimal places, and it's negative. Number 12. Sorry. 400 empty soft drink cans weigh 18.75 pounds. A recycling center pays 65 cents per pound for cans. Find the amount received for the 400 cans. Round to the nearest cent. All right, the 400 doesn't have anything to do with the problem. All we need to know is how much they weigh and how much we get paid per pound. So we have 18.75 pounds, and we're going to get paid 65 cents per can. Okay, so 18.75 times 0.65 gives you it comes out to 12.1875. Now, the directions say round to the nearest cent. Remember, your cents is 2 places behind the decimal. That's where you're talking about money. Okay? So the 7 is going to round that up. So you add 1 to the 8, and it would be $12.19. That's what you would get. Number 13, we need to divide decimals. So a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Make sure you put the 3.904 into your calculator first and divide it by 0.8. And it comes out to be a positive 4.88. Alright, is that right? I just put in new contacts and I can't see anything. Alright, that's pretty bad. Alright, number 14. Ramon, a high school football player, gained 162 yards on 26 carries in a high school football game. Find the average number of yards gained per carry. Round to the nearest hundredth. So, we have yards per carry. So you're going to do 162 divided by 26. Yards per carry. Okay, set it up like that. So we have 162 divided by 26, and that comes out to be 6.230. Okay? Now, and there's a bunch of other digits after that, but we only need to go back to the 0 because it says round to the nearest hundredth. Well, the 3 is in the hundredths place. The 0 is not going to round that up. So your answer is 6.23, and if you want to be fancy, you can put yards, and that would be it there. All right. Number 15. Convert the fraction to a terminating or a repeating decimal. Place a bar over any repeating digits. So remember, the way to change a fraction to a decimal is you just divide the top divided by the bottom. So you're going to do 39 divided by 4, which would give you 9.75. All right. Number 16. We're going to do the same thing. Convert the fraction to a terminating or a repeating decimal. Place a bar over any repeating digits. So 5 divided by 9 comes out to be 0.5, and the 5 repeats forever and ever. Now, some of you may see a 6 at the end of your calculator. That is because they rounded in the last digit. Don't worry about that. That 6 is not part of your answer. They've just rounded it off. What you need to see is that it's 0.5 repeating. So that's what you put as your answer. Number 17. Express the mixed number as a decimal. So the first thing we want to do, we can keep the 8. That's still our whole number, okay? Put the decimal point behind it, and then take 1/100th and divide 1 divided by 100 would give you 0.01. So that just gets stuck on behind the 8 because you technically added that to the whole number, okay? Number 18, convert the decimal to a fraction or a mixed number. So you've got 0.32, and this is where we look and we put 32 on top, and the denominator of the fraction is represented by a 1, and however many zeros you have digits. We have 2 digits, so it's over 100, okay? So 32 over 100. Now, we need to reduce this, okay? So you can either use 2 if you want. If you divide the top and bottom by 2, that's going to be, what the heck is that, 16 over 50. And now I can still divide by 2 again, and that would give me 8 over 25. Now, if I had divided by 4 to begin with, I would have gone right to the 8 over 25. So either way that you do it is fine, as long as you keep dividing and reducing down to the simplest form. Number 19, convert the decimal to a mixed number. So, there's a lot of ways you can do this. You could, well, not too many, I guess. You want to go ahead and keep the 5, okay? And you're going to put 0.75. You're going to drop that decimal point and then put, that just made a bigger mess, the 75 over 100. Okay, so 5 and 75 hundredths. Now, I can reduce my fraction part, by actually 25 goes into both of those. So think about quarters there, all right? So we're going to keep the 5, the whole number 5, and 75 divided by 25 is 3, and 100 divided by 25 is 4. So there's your mixed number, 5 and 3/4. Okay? Number 20, now we're getting into the percents. Write 31% as a decimal and as a fraction. Okay, so first of all, to write it as a decimal, we ignore the percent sign and we take the decimal point and go 2 places to the left. So you're going to have 0.31. Then to write it as a fraction, remember you drop the percent, put the 31 over 100. And now you can't reduce that, so that's your fraction. Number 21, write 3.6% as a decimal and as a fraction. Okay, so we've got a percent. Remember your shortcut, not really shortcut, but just a little hint to keep you straight on decimals and percents. We have a percent, we're going to a decimal. So I start with on the P side over here with the percent. I have to go to the left 2 places to make that a decimal. Sorry. So I'm going to have to add on a 0 there. 0.036 would be the decimal. And then to write that as a fraction, that's a little bit harder. What I would do, now that we have the 0.036, okay, and you want to write that as a fraction, just take that decimal and write it as a fraction. So think about that. You would put 36 on top, and see now it's no longer a percent. So the 36, you have to think about how many digits are on the bottom. 1, 2, 3. That's 1,000. So that's kind of confusing. I don't really like that part where we have to change that to a fraction. But basically, if you change it to a decimal, then think about changing decimals to fractions, then it would be 36 over 1,000, not over 100, because it's when we changed it to 0.036, it was no longer a percent. Okay, it was a decimal. So then you could put it over 1,000. Now, I know that I can divide by 4 there on the top and bottom. So 36 divided by 4 is 9, and 1,000 divided by 4, I think it's 250, pretty sure. I cannot use my calculator. Yeah, 250, okay? So that would be your fraction there. Now, number 22, write 1.018 as a percent. Okay, so we're starting with a decimal. Look back over here at your shortcut, notation. You start at the D. To get to the P, I have to go 2 places to the right. So I'm going to move that decimal point, whoop, whoop, 2 places. And it's going to go between the 1 and the 8, the second one. So it's going to be 101.8. And then make sure you write your percent sign. All right, 23. We have, this goes back to our equation review that was at the end of chapter 4. So to get the x by itself, we have -9 equals 7 plus x. So remember, trying to get x by itself, so I want to subtract 7 from both sides. So -9 and -7 is -16. The 7's cancel, and we have x. All right. Number 24. We want to solve and check this. So we have -4x equals 8. So I have to divide to get rid of that -4 on both sides. So the 4's cancel, and 8 divided by -4 gives me -2. 25. 7 minus 8a equals 6. So we need to get the 8a by itself first. So I'm going to start by subtracting. Be careful. Make sure you subtract. Subtracting 7. Okay? Those cancel. -8a equals, that would be 6 and -7 would give you -1. Now we have to divide by -8 on both sides. So the 8's cancel, and we're going to end up with a fraction. And it's going to be a positive fraction because you had 2 negatives there. So the answer is 1/8. And number 26, I'm pretty sure this is the last one. We have 15x minus 6 equals 4x minus 17. So my first step is to get the variables on the same side of the equal sign. So subtract 4x from both sides. So that gives me 11x minus 6. The 4x's are gone, and the negative 17 comes down, equals negative 17. Now I want to add 6, get rid of that constant. So 11x comes down. Negative 17 plus 6 would be negative 11, because you have to subtract there. Now divide by 11 on both sides. So the 11's cancel, and x equals a negative 1. And that should be it for practice test 4.